This organization not only doesn't give a fuck about me, but it doesn't give a fuck about any of us. It's quite explicit that everybody on the ship is replaceable. My name is Boline. I am a Spanish translator and interpreter. I come from an area of the country, Hampton Roads, which is a huge military area. A large percentage of the population are employees in one way or another of the military. My father was in the military. My mother's father was in the Navy. Yeah, I was just always taught by my parents that America is this sort of force for good in the world. I grew up playing a lot of video games. I grew up watching the same pro-war movies that everybody else did from that time. And when I graduated high school, I was encouraged by my parents to apply to a military college. I ended up going to Virginia Military Institute. You always have doubts, right? No matter how patriotic you are or whatever, but I thought, I really believed deep down that it was sort of a fundamentally good thing that I was doing. My mentors there were senior people in US Empire. One of the professors I worked with very closely had been a military attaché for Ronald Reagan. The conflict was really sort of black and white. It was us versus the terrorists. First it was Al-Qaeda, then it's the Taliban, but they're all really the same, It's all just us versus people that hate us. So I graduated mid-year, May 2015, and then we went on a 9-month deployment, most of which was spent in the Persian Gulf. My first ship, the one I deployed on, had an extremely toxic captain. We had a very, very low morale, a lot of personnel problems. I would be asked regularly to basically get my people to do their job even though they weren't being taken care of. That's really kind of what I came to see my role as an officer being. And I don't think that's fundamentally different from any kind of manager, right? Managers exist to act on behalf of the people who control the organization and to extract maximum value from their workers. And although the Navy's not a for-profit for the Navy, it's for-profit for the military-industrial complex, but look at the budget and tell me whether you think the ruling class thinks the military is important. They obviously do, because it's the single largest budget item. The way that procurement works in the Navy, it's so contracted out to just totally private companies that are for-profit companies whose only interest is to make money. Brand new ships are delivered to the Navy already with a ton of problems. One of the weapon systems we have, which is called a 25mm gun, but it has a thermal imaging camera on it that's quite useful. One of the spotting thermal imaging cameras that we use for the 5-inch gun break. And I remember routing this message for a new thermal imaging camera, which went bad because the captain insisted on using it for something it wasn't meant for, which is why it broke. And then it was $750 million, sometimes to make the ship work. My sailors would be like, look, there's a Navy issued part number for this thing, but I can go to Ace Hardware and just get a screw that will literally work the exact same. And it's 50 cents, so I'll just pay for it. And then we won't have to do all of this administrative work of buying a $150 screw, which is literally just a screw. There's a lot of stuff like that. I guess I really started to question the organization when I started working 6-7 days a week, staying late every day, and I was like, this feels like crap. I feel terrible, I hate my job, I dread going in every day. This organization not only doesn't give a fuck about me, but it doesn't give a fuck about any of us. It's quite explicit that everybody on the ship is replaceable. We very frequently talk about people in terms of the number designator of their qualification. Oh, I need a new 1070 or whatever. From there, I sort of started to realize hey, maybe this has to do with the relationship between management and workers more so than the ship that I'm on is bad because the captain is an asshole. And then, once you're there, once you're questioning the relationship between workers and management, you're, I think, more open to a critique of capitalism. Just be honest with yourself. If you've been in the military, you've seen all of the toxic, abusive work environments that I'm talking about. Don't just take the off-ramp of oh, it's because we have bad people in positions of power or whatever. If you look at all of these conflicts and you are honest about the history of how they started, it's quite obvious that the people who actually make the decisions do benefit very directly from these things, and the people who are sent to fight, and even the people at home, like the civilians in the United States, they don't benefit from this stuff. To say nothing of like the people who are actively being killed by the military, right? I don't think you need an argument that it's also bad for Americans to say we shouldn't do it, because being bad for anybody is enough, right? Like there's no reason to go kill people in Iraq and Afghanistan unless you are a billionaire who benefits directly from having control of the world's supply of hydrocarbons or whatever. If everybody doesn't do their job, the system doesn't work, and the people who are running the system will not be able to achieve their ends. There's, I think, a lens at which you could look through my time as an officer where I'm sort of coming to understand that actually, like, my boss needs me more than I need him. Like, even though people treat the E1 who's down in the engine room or the E1 who's cooking in the galley, even though people treat that sailor like shit, if they don't make the food, the ship doesn't work. Like, you don't eat, right? It's like clockwork. I mean, if any component stops working, the system stops working. The military is obviously a very disciplinary system. It's a system that really focuses on quote-unquote values, like, you know, obeying orders and discipline. But I think people in the military need to ask themselves, like, who does that discipline benefit? Like, what discipline is actually necessary for the operation of these platforms, and what discipline is just serving the interests of the organization and not in the interests of the people who are being disciplined?